So the Reserve Bank hopes everyone will get a pay rise. Let's have a look. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Heise Says. I want to share this article with you because I can relate to it a lot. I'm a small business owner, I've employed staff, and I know the challenges of running a small business. A lot of people don't appreciate just the sacrifices you make as a small business owner. You know, every dollar you spend for your staff, for your services, on your equipment, it's a dollar that isn't going on your mortgage, that isn't going to help feed your family. It can be bloody tough, particularly if you don't get paid for 90 days, like in the building game sometimes. So businesses undermine the Reserve Bank's hope for wage rises for workers. It's an interesting way to title this, but we'll go through it. So construction accounts for close to 10% of employment in Australia, and the sector is shrinking. Okay? As an architect, I work in this sector. I can understand that it's shrinking. I've been seeing it shrinking for a while. So work in the construction industry is drying up fast. And there is evidence over 1 million labourers and tradies are hurting and unable to secure higher pay. So over 1 million labourers and tradies. And I'll add to that architects as well, because I get the feeling our fees haven't increased since the GFC, depending on what you're negotiating with. I know it's bloody tough out there. So key points: 1 million workers across the country, weak wage bargaining position, the council says. Many businesses are still holding out on pay rises to the point that wage growth has stalled. Some small business owners say they're in no position to hand out pay increases. Yep. Yeah, I can completely appreciate and understand that. Apartment construction activity, for example, is now contracting at the fastest pace in 6 years. Well, that's because we've been in a boom of apartments. So it's just gone gangbusters, and that's why it's slowing down. So according to Widely Watched survey, yep. After years of booming employment in the residential construction sector, the latest performance of construction index showed employment at a reading of 44.4, well below the 50-point level that indicates expansion. So it's contracting. So the residential construction sector is contracting. Sector-wide employment was lower in January, having held up amid shrinking activity in recent months, the AIG Group's head of policy, Peter Burns, said. I think the uncertainty that will come with the next election, with changes to negative gearing and the potential ability to use future investments or to buy secondhand property, it's going to have an impact, even if it's just in people's planning and consideration. If they're worried, if there's fear in the market, you're hearing it all in the news. I'm spreading it too now, I guess. And that's what's going to happen. In construction, certainly there's a lot of contractors and people that employ others that are going to be in exactly the same boat, said Peter Strong, Chief Executive of the Council of Small Business Organisations of Australia. He also believed that more than 1 million other workers around the country are now in the same weak wage bargaining position as those in construction. Well, yes, it is going to, I kind of feel like we're going to have a recession. I think we're overdue for one. I think we're already seeing the beginnings of a recession in particular sectors. What is it, 3 quarters of negative growth? So if we have 3 quarters in this of negative growth, so employment maybe going for 3 quarters negative in the construction industry, that sector will be in recession. Maybe not the entire economy. It may be held up by other parts, but you've got to, if you're in that if you're in that sector, you feel it. You'll feel it. You're going to find it in a lot of retail. You're going to find it in a lot of businesses in the motor industry, observed. Yes. Yeah, I was talking to an architect yesterday, actually, who was telling me that, they do a lot of retail work, and a lot of the big centers have finished their expansion phase now. So, you get these bigger firms that are now chasing the smaller work, which would be the work that firms my size you would chase for. So now I'm competing with someone that maybe is offshoring all their drafting work. The bottom line is, say you've got to find another $3,000 a year for wages, that's $3,000 a year that will come from you. And that is the perspective of a small business owner. That's what it is. Majority of people who run small businesses are making sacrifices. You've got to work long hours. You may not get paid regularly. We've had times where, with big multi-million-dollar companies just wouldn't pay us sometimes. Wouldn't pay us. And you're talking small amounts. You're talking $500 here. I've had arguments with millionaires over a couple of $100. They didn't want to pay me. Bastards. So it doesn't come from your profit, but from the profit of small business. It's their income, it's their wage. So yeah, that is your, the profit of a small business really is the wage that you make as a business owner. So that means I've got to give someone, or the business person has to give to other people $3,000 and they don't get it back. So it impacts upon their capacity to go on holiday, pay for food, put their kids through school. And I think a lot of people forget that, yeah. A lot of people, I think everyone, I would have, if we could have a quota in Parliament, I would push for a quota for business owners, small business owners, people who have experienced just the pain of dealing with bureaucratic red tape and BS. I would really argue for that, because then that would give them an appreciation that the more rubbish that government creates, the more pain it is for business, and it can be really difficult to deal with and stressful. And I know a lot of small business owners that will offshore work overseas just so they don't have to deal with this stuff. The COBOA has called on workers to be grateful for what they have. Well, yeah, you should be grateful. If your boss is sacrificing, if he's a small business owner or a small business owner, is sacrificing for you, I would tend to work through the night as well along with my staff to get stuff happening. Sometimes you just have to make sacrifices. So step back and say, okay, I'm happy with what I've got, and it will help me live the lifestyle I'm used to. Am I happy with that? And if I am, as much as I'd like more money, I should be happy that I've got a job, Mr. Strong argued. Yeah, I have a friend who has an electrical contracting company, and his issue was he'd get these guys all up and trained, and then they'd run to the mines. They'd run to the mines all the time. And it's just seeing how his perspective changed over the years. He stopped caring. He became hardened as a boss. As a boss, you can start out all young and nice and happy, and I'm going to take care of my employees a lot, give them all this, and really, be a great boss. But once you get screwed over a few times by your staff, you become a hard bastard like you had to work for. You kind of transform and you appreciate it. It's interesting seeing these guys from university that were like staunch lefties and all socialists and all communal working, and just talking to them a few years later when they got screwed over a bit by their workers, and they're starting to lead more and more to the liberal or the right side of politics. It's just a way of life, I guess. The RBA counts on rising wages to offset falling housing prices. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have a bit of a contraction here in Australia, so people, you just need to prepare for it. It's not the end of the world. You need to, prepare for it. Minimize your debt as much as you can. Get rid of your credit card debt as much as you can. Get rid of all of your monthly expenses. That $10 for Netflix, that $10 for this, that, every month, that adds up. You cut all of that and boom, you got, a fair chunk of your mortgage payment or your rent sitting there or your groceries. People just need to be sensible and you'll survive. So Reserve Bank Governor Philip Lowe commented early this week that businesses were reportedly finding it difficult to secure workers with the necessary skills, so workers should be in a strong position to bargain for higher pay. I think that depends on the sector that you're at. And you can try, but if you're not making the revenue, you can't do the higher pay. National Australia Bank confidentially surveys a large number of businesses every month. Its latest quarterly report showed that while the Reserve Bank was right about high demand for workers, many businesses were still holding out on pay rises to the point that wage growth had stalled again. The bank's chief economist, Alan Oster, blamed the recent collapse in the construction sector for the widespread wage freeze. I think it also has to do, I'd put an argument out there that just uncertainty about the future, uncertainty, about the government, uncertainty about the next election, and people will tend to pull back. They might hold off on those projects. They might hold off on that discretionary spending. And then that reduces income in these businesses, so they hold off on rewarding the staff. When times are good, you will share it with your team. Okay? You will go out of your way to share it with your team, to thank them. If you don't, you're going to lose them. It's that simple. When times are tough, you'd probably pull them aside going, guys, we can't do it, or we have to cut down to 4 days a week. You need to find a way to keep the business going sometimes, and it can get that tough. They've had a couple of very good years and now they're on the downside. And that's part of the house price cycle, he explained. We are worrying way too much. There is a counter-argument here, though. Deloitte's Access Economics partner, Nikki Hutley, said businesses were worrying too much about the economy and it was not helping them or their workers. Well, okay, that's odd. Of course businesses are going to worry about the economy. It affects their day-to-day future planning. Here's the thing, when you ring up other business people, when you're like talking to other professionals, going, oh, how are you going? How are you going? And they'll often say, yeah, no, it's going okay. We could do with a bit more. And then you kind of, prod them a bit and go, well, what's your pipeline? And that's the thing. If the pipeline has some nice, big, fat, juicy projects sitting there or you're working through so you can keep a good team employed and there's your income sorted, all the rest of the little stuff can just be cream. And I'm talking from a designer or engineer's perspective. But if you've got just lots of little tiny things to keep the machine going and your pipeline's getting a bit spotty, then people start to worry about it because that's natural. Maybe if you worked in a small business, not at Deloitte's, you might appreciate that, Nikki. So, and just because we're not growing as strongly as we might have been doesn't mean we're not growing. And there's a nuance there. Yes, but we'll see. I think we're going to get some... Well, no, we're not growing. We're not growing. The construction industry here is 44.1 and employment is decreasing. So there's evidence that we're not growing in that sector. It depends. If your own sector is in recession, you're going to feel it. So it's not just about less teeth grinding and finger tapping. Miss Hutley believes small businesses still have plenty to smile about. Sure you do. The low interest rate environment that we have is supportive for a growing economy, she said. We are seeing tax cuts come into the fore. We see healthy growth in employment for 2 years now. We're actually seeing the rate of growth in business credit start to tick up, and that's a healthy thing for the economy as well. I think she's taking some very big picture things. When you're in the coal face, a lot of that doesn't really matter. Tax cuts take a long time to flow through. You can go to the Reaganomics model there, where tax cuts actually increase revenue. It didn't really work there, too. Low interest rates, okay, that's great, but I would argue that can be offset by the media. If the media causes people, if they're losing value in their property and they've got low interest rates on their property and the media is pushing fear out there, that's going to mean people will stop on their discretionary spending, which will ripple through the economy. A lot of it's psychology and persuasion. I don't think the points here are strong enough. They all seem kind of weak compared to the counter-arguments that we're getting. The credit squeeze is biting both businesses and the consumers. So this is to do with the housing sector as well, where a lot of the banks are just restricting lending. They're making it harder for people to get access to money to buy houses, apartments, and those type of things. And that is affecting businesses and consumers and the housing sector. Here we go. Many business owners disagree. Well, there we go. Yeah, I'm a business owner and I disagree. So Joe Musa runs a small construction business where he employs 8 tradies building bathrooms and kitchens. Oh, mate, poor guy. He says getting a line of credit from a bank has become mission impossible thanks to the fallout from the Banking Royal Commission. Put it this way, a year ago, banks were just handing out money like it was going out of trays, he observed. And Joe would just walk up to the bank and say, hey, listen, I want to build a house. I need 100 grand. And the bank would approve him, no questions asked. In the last 4 to 5 months, the banks have put a tight squeeze on it. It's very hard for you to go to the bank for a loan at the moment. Well, there you go. That will ruin his cash flow and really limit the opportunity of his business to grow. That's another side to it. Mr. Musa said he was in no position to hand out any pay increases. I'm guilty of that. I don't normally hand out pay rises to any of my workers, he admitted. A lot of these guys that I've got working with me, if they had to leave me to go get another job, they'd struggle to find another job somewhere else. Yeah, he's probably right. This is backed up by research by the NAB. We also see that a level of slack in the labour market is more than you might think, Mr. Oster said. The underutilization rate is more than 13%. Okay, so people aren't working to their full potential. That's another sign. I don't think a lot of employers want to give a pay rise, and they probably won't. Well, yeah, they won't. Not if they're having trouble getting credit, not if they're having their revenues taking a hit, not if there's uncertainty in the market. You're not going to... When was the last time I gave a pay rise? It's when we had like a year's worth of work lined up, and I gave some pay rises. And then the work vanished, so I had to take away the pay rises. Didn't go over well. So Mr. Musa agrees with the COSPO on wage growth, adding that his workers need to understand any pay rise will have to come out of his pocket, and he has his own family to worry about. Yeah, that's it. So jobs are vulnerable to a housing crash. Yeah, they are. So he said he did hand out a pay rise before Christmas, but it was only $20. Mr. Oster said that the headwinds for businesses, especially in the construction sector, had become so strong that its workers were now starting to batten down the hatches in a storm, hurting just about everyone. They're going to be worried. They're anxious in terms of their own budgets, and that means that 55% of the economy is not great, he said, referring to the importance of consumer spending to GDP. Exactly. Exactly. This is not what Dr. Lowe and his colleagues at the Reserve Bank want to hear as they try to spark inflation and life into an increasingly listless economy. Yes, well, it is... Yeah, I frankly, I'm preparing for tough times coming ahead, guys, and I think, let me know in the comments. Are you? If you're in the construction game, I know I definitely have a few of you who have been watching from the Opal stuff. Are you preparing for tough times ahead? You know, tightening your belts, cutting your costs. How have you seen your work? Is it still flowing nicely, or it's the workload getting a bit patchier? How about some tradies or friends you have? How are they going? So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Guys, thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Ding the bell to see my daily updates. And let me know how I've now got NBN, so I'm producing this at a higher resolution content, like 1080p. Let me know if you notice a difference. Take care. Bye for now.